I'm 47 years old, and for the past 6 years, I haven't looked at the ocean the same way. My name is Dr. James Holloway. I was a marine documentary filmmaker for 22 years, specializing in deep-water cinematography for National Geographic, BBC Earth, and the Smithsonian Channel. I've filmed great whites hunting seals off Guadalupe Island, documented bioluminescent species in the Midnight Zone, and captured footage that won 2 Emmy Awards. I trusted my cameras. I trusted what they showed me. But that was before September 2018, before I filmed something off the coast of Iceland that spoke to me in perfect English and told me what humanity really is, what we've always been, and why they've been watching us since before we had language. I can't work anymore. Not the way I used to. I still own my equipment, but I can't bring myself to point a camera at open water. Because every time I do, I see her face in the viewfinder. Those eyes that were too intelligent, too old, too aware. And I hear what she said, the words that no one was supposed to hear. The truth about why certain ships disappear, why some swimmers vanish without a trace, why there are gaps in our understanding of human evolution that make no sense. The footage exists. 4 hours and 17 minutes of the highest resolution underwater video ever captured of something that isn't supposed to be real. But the files are corrupted in ways that techs at 3 different data recovery firms said were impossible. The video plays, but the audio cuts in and out. The image pixelates at crucial moments, and every copy I make degrades further, as if something in the data itself is resisting preservation. I'm telling this story now because 3 weeks ago, a research submersible vanished 200 miles off the coast of Norway. 5 crew members. No distress signal. No debris. And I know exactly what happened to them, because the last coordinates they transmitted were less than 2 nautical miles from where I met her, where I filmed her, where she told me things about humanity that I wish I could forget. In August 2018, I was approached by a private research foundation called the Ericsson Institute for Marine Biology. They were headquartered in Reykjavik, Iceland, and they wanted to fund a comprehensive documentary series on deep-water ecosystems in the North Atlantic. The money was exceptional, $2.3 million for a 6-month project. The creative freedom was total. They wanted 4K footage of anything we could find below 600 feet, with particular focus on volcanic ridge systems where geothermal vents created unique habitats. I assembled my usual team, people I'd worked with for years, people I trusted with my life because in deep-water filming, your life depends on the competence of everyone around you. Dr. Sarah Chen, 39, was our marine biologist. She had a PhD from Scripps Institution of Oceanography and had published 47 peer-reviewed papers on deep-sea ecosystems. Sarah was methodical to the point of being compulsive. She labeled everything, documented everything, never made assumptions. She had a 7-year-old son named Marcus, who she FaceTimed every night, no matter where we were in the world. Robert Nygaard, 44, was our dive supervisor and ROV pilot. Norwegian by birth, he'd spent 15 years working on North Sea oil platforms before transitioning to scientific diving. Robert had survived a saturation diving accident in 2009 that killed 2 of his colleagues, and he never took risks. He checked equipment 3 times before every deployment. His wife was pregnant with their 2nd child. Dr. Amara Okonkwo, 31, was our acoustics specialist. She'd developed proprietary hydrophone arrays that could isolate individual marine mammal vocalizations in noisy environments. Nigerian-American, she'd turned down a position at Woods Hole to work with us because, as she said, "The deep ocean is the last true wilderness on Earth, and I want to hear everything it's saying." She had perfect pitch and could identify whale species by their songs from hundreds of miles away. Thomas Park, 52, was our expedition coordinator and safety officer. Former Coast Guard rescue swimmer, he'd saved 89 lives during his 20-year career. Thomas was the kind of person who remained calm during emergencies, who always had a backup plan and a backup to the backup. He'd lost his sister to a drowning accident when he was 16, and he took water safety with absolute seriousness. We arrived in Reykjavik on September 3, 2018. The Ericsson Institute had chartered a 185-foot research vessel called the Björgvin, equipped with a Class 3 ROV rated to 3,000 feet, a wet lab, a decompression chamber, and enough provisions for 60 days at sea. The crew consisted of 8 Icelandic sailors who knew the North Atlantic better than anyone I'd ever worked with. Our target zone was approximately 140 nautical miles northwest of the West Fjords, where the Mid-Atlantic Ridge created underwater volcanic activity. The area was known for its biodiversity: tube worms, yeti crabs, and species of fish adapted to extreme pressure and temperature. National Geographic had filmed there in 2011, but that footage was limited to a few hours. We were going to spend weeks documenting every aspect of the ecosystem. We spent 4 days in port, calibrating equipment and reviewing safety protocols. Sarah assembled her sampling gear. Amara tested her hydrophone arrays. Robert ran diagnostic checks on the ROV, a beast of a machine worth $4.5 million, equipped with 8K cameras, mechanical arms, and enough lighting to illuminate a football field. I tested my camera systems obsessively. I was using red helium 8K sensors in custom pressure housings rated to 1,000 feet. I had 4 complete camera packages plus body-mounted GoPros and a tethered camera system that could be deployed from the ROV. Every frame would be recorded at the highest resolution available to civilian filmmakers. We departed Reykjavik on September 8th at 600 hours. The weather was ideal: calm seas, good visibility. We reached our target coordinates on September 9th at 1430 hours. The sonar showed bottom depth at 847 feet, with significant geological features indicating volcanic activity. That first week was routine. We deployed the ROV 6 times, filming hydrothermal vents and the communities that clustered around them. The footage was spectacular: shimmering mineral plumes rising from the seafloor, clouds of extremophile bacteria, tube worms 3 feet long swaying in the current. Sarah collected samples. Amara recorded ambient sounds: the creaking of geological formations, the clicking of shrimp colonies, the groaning of the earth itself. On September 14th, we documented something unusual. The ROV was surveying a vertical cliff face at 762 feet when the cameras picked up what looked like carved symbols on the rock. Not natural erosion patterns, deliberate marks arranged in geometric sequences. Sarah studied the footage. That's not geological. Those marks were made by something. Tool marks? I asked. Possibly. But the precision is extraordinary. And look at the placement. They're arranged in perfect intervals, 23 centimeters between each grouping. Robert suggested volcanic rock that had cracked in unusual patterns. Thomas thought maybe research equipment from a previous expedition had scraped the surface. But Amara was quiet, studying the audio recording from that dive. "There's something else," she said. "Listen to this." She played back the hydrophone recording from the same timestamp when the ROV filmed the symbols. Under the normal ambient ocean noise, there was a pattern: low-frequency pulses, rhythmic and regular, occurring at intervals that matched the spacing of the carved symbols. "That's not geological," Amara said. "That's deliberate signal generation." We marked the location and continued our survey. Over the next 3 days, we found similar symbols on 11 different rock formations, all at depths between 700 and 850 feet. The patterns were different, but the precision was consistent. And every location produced the same low-frequency pulses on Amara's hydrophones. Sarah cataloged each site, documenting water temperature, current patterns, and proximity to thermal vents. She was building a database, looking for commonalities. On September 17th, she showed us her findings. "Look at the distribution. These sites form a perimeter. They're encircling something at the center." She brought up a bathymetric map on the lab monitor. The marked locations formed a rough circle, approximately 2 nautical miles in diameter. "What's in the center?" Thomas asked. Sarah zoomed in. "A depression. The sonar shows it dropping to 1,240 feet. And there's something interfering with our returns. The resolution degrades the closer we get to the center point. Magnetic anomaly? Robert suggested. Possibly. Or dense mineral deposits. We need to get the ROV down there. I was already planning the camera setup. This was exactly the kind of mystery that made for compelling documentary footage. An unexplained geological feature, acoustic anomalies, evidence of, what? Ancient human activity? That seemed impossible at this depth. But something had made those marks. We scheduled a deep dive for September 19th. The ROV would descend to the depression, document whatever was interfering with our sonar, and collect samples if possible. I would deploy all 4 camera systems plus the tethered cameras to ensure we captured every angle. The night before the dive, Amara came to find me on deck. It was 2300 hours, and I was reviewing footage from the day's work. "James, I need to show you something. I've been analyzing the audio patterns from those sites. The low-frequency pulses aren't random. They're structured." She pulled up a spectrogram on her laptop. The pulses appeared as vertical lines, varying in intensity and frequency. I ran them through pattern recognition software. There's mathematical structure here. Prime number sequences, Fibonacci ratios. This isn't natural. This is language. I stared at the screen. Language? From what? I don't know, but whatever made those carvings is also generating these signals. And James, there's something else. The signals are getting stronger. They've increased in amplitude by 17% since we started surveying this area. You think our presence is triggering a response? I think something knows we're here, Amara said quietly. And it's trying to communicate. September 19th, 2018. We began ROV deployment at 0815 hours. Weather conditions were optimal. Surface temperature was 9 degrees Celsius. Water visibility was estimated at 40 meters. Robert piloted the ROV from the control station while I managed the camera systems. Sarah monitored environmental sensors. Amara had her hydrophones recording continuously. The ROV descended at 30 meters per minute, standard rate. At 200 feet, we switched on the primary lights. At 400 feet, we entered the thermocline, a sharp temperature drop from 9 degrees to 3 degrees. At 600 feet, we reached the depth where we'd found the first symbols. Robert guided the ROV toward the center of the pattern Sarah had mapped. The sonar interference was immediately obvious. The returns became scattered, unreliable. "I'm getting false echoes," Robert said. "The sonar's showing structures that disappear when I change angle. It's like something's reflecting the signal in ways that shouldn't be possible." At 780 feet, the ROV's forward cameras picked up the depression. It was a circular pit, approximately 400 feet in diameter, with smooth walls that descended at a 60-degree angle. "Those walls aren't natural," Sarah said. "That's too uniform. That's been excavated." At 800 feet underwater, Thomas asked, "What could excavate something that size at this depth?" We had no answer. Robert brought the ROV to the edge of the pit. I adjusted camera angles, ensuring we captured the full scope. The walls were dark basalt, and carved into them were more symbols. Thousands of them, covering every surface, spiraling down into darkness. "James, are you seeing this?" Robert asked. "Recording everything. The resolution is perfect. These carvings are fresh. No marine growth, no sediment accumulation." "That's impossible," Sarah said. "At this depth, anything exposed should be colonized by bacteria within weeks. These surfaces are clean." Amara's voice cut through. "I'm getting acoustic returns from inside the pit. Multiple sources. They're not random. They're responding to our ROV's sonar pings." "Something's down there," Robert said. "We needed to go deeper." Robert piloted the ROV over the edge and began descending into the pit. The walls closed around us. The carved symbols flowed past the cameras in an endless stream. At 950 feet, the walls opened up again. We'd entered a cavern. The space was massive. The sonar suggested it was at least 200 feet across and 80 feet high. The walls were covered in bioluminescent growth that pulsed with soft blue light. but it wasn't random. The pulses moved in waves across the surfaces, creating patterns. "That's coordinated," Amara said. "That's not individual organisms reacting independently. That's a collective system generating organized light displays." In the center of the cavern, illuminated by the ROV's lights, was a structure. It rose from the floor like a sculpture, smooth curves and geometric angles that seemed both organic and architectural. The material looked like nacre, mother of pearl, but the size was wrong. This thing was at least 40 feet tall. "What are we looking at?" Thomas asked. Sarah's voice was shaking. "I don't know, but that's not natural formation. That's constructed." I was filming everything, adjusting focus and exposure to capture every detail. The structure had openings, passages, or chambers, arranged in patterns that suggested purpose, function. Robert brought the ROV closer. At 50 feet from the structure, every system on the ROV failed simultaneously. Lights cut out. Cameras went dark. Propulsion stopped. We lost all telemetry. "Bringing it up," Robert said, manipulating controls. Nothing happened. "I've lost connection. The tether's still intact, but there's no signal." For 7 minutes, we had no contact with the ROV. No video, no data, nothing. The machine was sitting in a cavern 1,000 feet below us, completely unresponsive. Then, without any input from Robert, it rebooted. Systems came back online. Cameras reactivated. And what we saw made my blood turn cold. The ROV had moved. It was no longer 50 feet from the structure. It was inside one of the chambers, rotated 180 degrees from its previous orientation. And surrounding it, visible in the restored lighting, were faces. Human faces. Dozens of them, emerging from the walls of the chamber. Not skulls, living faces pressed against some kind of translucent membrane. Their eyes were open. They were watching the ROV's cameras. Watching us. Sarah made a sound that might have been a scream or a sob. Thomas was already on the radio to the ship's captain, demanding we prepare for immediate departure. Robert was trying to regain manual control of the ROV, but the machine wasn't responding to his commands. The ROV began moving deeper into the structure, propelled by something other than its own systems. The cameras showed passage after passage, chamber after chamber, and in every space, more faces. Hundreds of them, thousands. Some looked recently trapped, skin still pink, hair still intact. Others were older, skin gray and withered. And some were ancient, barely recognizable as human anymore, changed into something else. But all of them were alive. All of them were conscious. I could see their eyes tracking the ROV's movement. I could see their mouths moving behind the membranes, trying to speak, to scream, to warn us. "Get it out of there," Thomas was saying. "Robert, override the system. Cut the tether if you have to. Get it out of there now." Robert's hands were moving across controls that wouldn't respond. "I can't. Something else is driving it." The ROV descended further. The chambers gave way to larger spaces, and there, in the deepest part of the structure, the cameras showed us what was tending the collection. They were in the water, moving through the space with fluid grace. At first, my brain tried to interpret them as seals or large fish, but as the ROV's lights illuminated them fully, there was no mistaking what they were. Human-like forms, but changed, adapted. Skin translucent enough to see muscle and bone beneath. Eyes enlarged, completely black, designed for darkness. No ears, just smooth surfaces. Hands webbed with elongated fingers. And below the waist, where legs should be, muscular tails covered in scales that caught the light like opals. Mermaids. Real ones. Not the fairy tale creatures from children's stories. These were predators. Ancient and intelligent and completely inhuman despite their partially human shape. One swam directly up to the ROV's main camera. She stopped 3 feet away, hovering in the water, staring directly into the lens. Directly at me. Her face was beautiful and terrible. The bone structure was human enough to register as familiar. but the proportions were wrong. The eyes too large, set too far apart. The mouth too wide, revealing multiple rows of teeth when she opened it. Then she spoke. The sound came through the ROV's external microphone, transmitted up the tether to our speakers. It wasn't a human voice. The pitch was wrong, the resonance alien. But the words were English, perfect, unaccented English. "You're watching, aren't you? Recording this, trying to understand what you've found." Sarah was gripping the edge of the control console. Thomas had gone pale. Robert had stopped trying to control the ROV. We were all frozen, listening. The creature continued. "You always do this. You come down in your machines, pointing your cameras, collecting your samples. You think you're discovering us? You think you're the first." She moved closer. Her face filled the camera frame. "We've been here since before your species learned to make fire. We watched you crawl out of the oceans, watched you forget what you were, what you came from, and we've been collecting you ever since, bringing you back, helping you remember." "Jesus Christ," Thomas whispered. The creature tilted her head. "You call us myths. Call us mermaids, sirens, sea spirits. Your stories say we lure sailors to their deaths. That's wrong. We don't kill you. We preserve you. We keep you alive in ways you can't imagine. We keep you conscious, because you need to understand what you've become, what you've done." She gestured to the chambers around her, to the thousands of faces pressed against the membranes. "These are yours, your kind, collected over millennia. Fishermen and sailors and swimmers who went too deep. Explorers who came looking for us. Scientists like you who pointed their cameras where they shouldn't. We keep them all. We preserve them. We force them to witness what humanity has done to the oceans, what you've poisoned and destroyed and taken without thought." The creature's expression changed. Something like sadness crossed her inhuman face. "You were ours once. 3 million years ago, your ancestors lived in the water. You evolved on land, but part of you still remembers. That's why you're drawn to the ocean, why you dream of swimming, why you feel peace near water. You're homesick for a place you left before you had language to describe it." She paused, and in that silence Amara's hydrophones picked up something else. A chorus of sounds rising from the structure. Not the creatures speaking, the preserved humans. They were trying to vocalize through whatever membranes held them. A sound of collective agony that made my teeth ache. "We're taking you back," the creature said. "One by one, ship by ship. Every human who enters our territory. We're reversing your evolution, forcing your bodies to adapt to pressure and darkness, changing your lungs, your metabolism, your consciousness. It takes time, decades, sometimes centuries, but we're patient, and we're going to continue until we've reclaimed every human on Earth, until you're all back in the water where you belong." She reached out one webbed hand and touched the ROV's camera housing. "You'll tell people what you've seen. You'll show them this footage, and they won't believe you. They'll call it fabrication, call you crazy. They always do. And while they're dismissing you, we'll keep collecting, keep preserving, keep waiting for the day when the last human stands on the last shore and realizes there's nowhere left to run." The creature's face moved closer, filling the entire frame. "Tell them, Dr. Holloway. Tell them what mermaids really do. Tell them what's waiting in the deep water. Tell them about the collection. And tell them we're coming shallower. Every year we adapt to lower pressures. Soon we'll be able to reach swimmers at 50 feet. Then 20. Then the surface itself. And when we can walk on land the way you once swam in our ocean, we'll complete the collection. We'll bring every human back to the deep. Back home." The creature smiled. "It was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. We know where you are, James. We know your ship. We know your crew. And before you leave our territory, we're going to take one of you. A gift. A promise of what's coming. Choose carefully who stays behind." The camera cut to black. Every system on the ROV failed simultaneously and permanently. The tether went slack. Robert pulled it up, but the ROV was gone. $4.5 million of equipment, plus all 4 of my primary camera systems, vanished. But the footage had been transmitting in real time. Every word, every image had been recorded to our shipboard servers. 4 hours and 17 minutes of the most significant discovery in human history, and we had 1 hour to decide who we were going to sacrifice to escape. Thomas took command immediately. "We're leaving, now. Captain, prepare for immediate departure. Plot the fastest course out of this area." The captain, a 60-year-old Icelandic man named Sven, didn't question the order. He'd been monitoring our communications. He'd heard what the creature said. His crew was already raising anchor, but Sarah was staring at the blank monitors. "We can't just leave. We have to document this. We have to—" "Document what?" Thomas cut her off. "A threat? A promise to take one of us? Sarah, that thing knew James's name. It knew our ship. It's been tracking us." Robert was already backing up the footage to 3 separate drives. "We need copies. Multiple locations. If something happens to the ship—" "Nothing's going to happen," Thomas said. But his voice lacked conviction. Amara was still wearing her headphones, listening to the hydrophones. Her face had gone gray. "They're coming up. I'm tracking multiple acoustic signatures ascending from depth, at least a dozen, moving at 15 knots. 15 knots. Faster than our ship could manage. The Björgvin's maximum speed was 12 knots. We were 140 nautical miles from the nearest port. Even if we ran full speed, it would take us nearly 12 hours to reach safety. And they were faster." Thomas made the call. "Everyone to the main cabin. Nobody goes on deck alone. Nobody goes near the water. We maintain constant watch in shifts until we reach port." We gathered in the ship's mess. 8 Icelandic crew members, our 5-person research team, and a captain who'd spent 40 years at sea and had never looked frightened until now. We reviewed the footage together, confirming what we'd heard, what we'd seen. Sarah had stopped trying to rationalize it. "Those people in the chambers, some of them were wearing modern clothing. I saw a diving suit, a life vest with U.S. Coast Guard markings. These aren't ancient victims. This is ongoing, active." Amara played back some of the acoustic recordings. "I've been comparing these to databases of marine mammal vocalizations. These don't match anything, but the frequency ranges and harmonic structures are similar to human speech. They've developed their own language, a complex one." Robert had been searching news databases on the ship's satellite internet. "I'm finding patterns, ships disappearing in this area going back decades. In 1973, a Soviet research vessel vanished 90 miles from our current location. In 1989, a Norwegian fishing trawler. In 2003, a tourist diving boat, all within 50 nautical miles of where we just were. No wreckage ever found. No survivors." The Björgvin was moving at full speed, cutting through moderate swells. The weather was holding. But as the hours passed, Amara's hydrophones continued tracking the acoustic signatures following us. "They're pacing us," she said at 1900 hours, "staying just below sonar range, but I can hear them. They're matching our speed." "Can they maintain that?" I asked. "I don't know. I don't know what their physiology is capable of." At 21:30 hours, the first one breached. I was on deck with Thomas, both of us wearing life vests despite being on a ship. We were 80 nautical miles from our starting position when she surfaced 200 yards off the port bow. In the ship's running lights, we could see her clearly. She floated vertically in the water, her upper body above the surface, watching the ship. Her skin reflected the light like silver. Her hair, if that's what it was, flowed around her shoulders in thick strands. And her eyes, those massive black eyes, tracked our movement. Thomas keyed the radio. "Captain, we have visual on something in the water. Port bow, 200 yards. Sven's voice came back. "I see it on thermal imaging. There are more. 8 signatures surrounding the ship." We were encircled. For the next 2 hours they accompanied us, sometimes surfacing, sometimes disappearing below for minutes at a time. They didn't attack. didn't approach closer. They just watched. Waited. Sarah was analyzing the footage from the ROV, zooming in on the faces in the chambers, trying to identify victims. I found a match. This woman, she disappeared in 2015. Margaret Sullivan, marine biologist from the University of Bergen. She was conducting research on deep-sea fish. Her boat was found drifting empty. No body ever recovered. "How many others can you identify?" I asked. "I've found 6 so far. All within the last 30 years. All researchers, divers, or sailors. All disappeared without explanation." She looked up at me, her face haunted. "James, how long have they been doing this? How many people are in those chambers?" "Thousands," Amara said quietly. She said millennia. If they've been collecting since before recorded history, the math was overwhelming. If they took even a dozen people per year, for thousands of years, the number of humans preserved in those underwater structures would number in the hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, and they were still alive, still conscious, forced to witness whatever the creatures wanted them to see. At 0300 hours on September 20th, the acoustic signatures vanished. Amara pulled off her headphones. "They're gone. I'm not tracking them anymore." Thomas wasn't relieved. They didn't give up. They're planning something. He was right. At 0445 hours, Robert went missing. He'd been in the ROV control room, making additional backup copies of the footage. When Sarah went to check on him at 0500, the room was empty. The door to the deck was open. The footage was still copying to an external drive, progress bar showing 73% complete. We searched the ship. Every cabin, every storage space, every possible location. Robert Nygard was gone. Thomas found evidence on the stern deck, a puddle of seawater leading to the rail, wet handprints on the metal, prints that were too large, fingers too long. They'd come aboard while we were all inside, taken Robert, fulfilled their promise. Robert's wife was 7 months pregnant. His daughter was 3 years old. And he was gone. Taken into the ocean by creatures that would keep him alive and conscious for centuries, while they changed him into something else. Sarah collapsed. I had to physically support her to get her back inside. Amara was crying silently. Thomas stood at the rail staring at the dark water, his hands clenched into fists. We reached Reykjavik at 1830 hours on September 20th. The authorities were waiting. We'd radioed ahead about a missing crew member. They interviewed each of us separately. We told them the truth. Robert had disappeared from the ship during the night. No, we didn't see anyone board. No, there were no signs of struggle. Yes, we searched thoroughly. They treated it as a man overboard incident. Probable accident. Despite the calm seas. Despite the lack of any reason for Robert to be on the stern deck alone at 4:45 in the morning. The Erickson Institute sent representatives. They collected all our footage, all our data, all our samples. They promised to analyze everything, to publish findings, to make this the most significant marine biology discovery of the century. 2 weeks later, we received word that all the footage had been corrupted during the transfer process, irreversibly damaged. The backup drives had experienced simultaneous failures. The copies Robert had been making when he was taken? The external drive was found, but it was blank, completely erased. Every piece of evidence, gone. Except for one copy. The copy I'd made secretly in the 2 hours before we reached port. A thumb drive I'd hidden in a waterproof case inside my camera bag. The authorities didn't find it because they didn't know to look. The Institute didn't confiscate it because I never mentioned it existed. I have 4 hours and 17 minutes of footage showing a structure that shouldn't exist, chambers full of living human prisoners, and a creature speaking perfect English while describing a plan to reclaim humanity for the ocean. But when I try to share it, the files corrupt. Audio drops out. Video pixelates. Every technical expert I've consulted says the degradation pattern makes no sense. It's as if the data itself is resisting copying. It's November 17th, 2024. 6 years, 2 months, and 3 days since we returned from Iceland. Sarah Chen left marine biology. She works as a high school teacher in San Diego now, teaching earth science to teenagers. I visit her once a year. We don't talk about what happened. We can't. The one time I tried, she had a panic attack so severe she had to be hospitalized. Her son is 13 now. She won't let him learn to swim. Amara Okonkwo disappeared in May 2020. She'd been conducting acoustic research off the coast of South Africa when her research vessel returned to port without her. The crew reported she'd gone into the water early one morning, saying she heard something. She never came back up. No body was found. I know what happened. I know what she heard. Thomas Park works private security now, far from any ocean. He lives in Denver, Colorado. The last time we spoke 2 years ago, he told me he still has nightmares about the handprints on the stern deck, about the sound of something moving through water below the ship, about the feeling of being watched from the deep. Robert Nygaard is officially listed as lost at sea, presumed dead. His daughter is 9 years old now. His second child, a son, is 5. They've never met their father, but somewhere, 1,000 feet below the surface of the North Atlantic, Robert is still alive, still conscious, suspended in one of those chambers, kept preserved while his body slowly changes, while those creatures force him to witness whatever truth they want him to understand. I still have the footage, the one copy that survived. I've uploaded it to secure servers, sent it to journalists, scientists, government agencies. Most ignore it. Those who watch dismiss it as elaborate CGI. A few believe it, but they're called conspiracy theorists, dismissed as fringe lunatics. The Erickson Institute for Marine Biology doesn't exist anymore. When I tried to follow up with them in 2019, I found that all their records had been expunged. The building in Reykjavik had been sold. The foundation itself had dissolved. The $2.3 million they paid us came from accounts that were closed 6 months after we returned. It's as if they were created specifically to send us to that location, to document what was there, and then vanished once the mission was complete. Someone wanted us to find those creatures. Someone wanted footage, and once they had it, they made sure it couldn't be shared. I can't work anymore. I have cameras worth $400,000 sitting in storage. I accept speaking engagements occasionally, talking about marine documentary filmmaking to students and film societies. But I don't go in the water. I don't point cameras at the ocean, because I'm afraid of what I might see. Last month, on October 23rd, a research submersible vanished off the coast of Norway. The Nereus II, carrying 5 crew members conducting deep water geological surveys. Their last transmission included coordinates 63.4 degrees, 5.88 degree DU. I checked those coordinates against our 2018 mission data. The Nereus II disappeared less than 2 nautical miles from where I filmed her, where she spoke to me, where she promised they were coming shallower. The search was called off after 5 days. No wreckage found, no debris, no survivors. Official explanation: catastrophic hull failure at depth. I know better. And 3 days ago, I received a message. It came through an encrypted email service sent from an untraceable account. No text, just a video file. I haven't opened it yet. I'm afraid to. But the file name tells me everything I need to know. Holloway Collection Update.mp4. They know where I am. They've known all along. And whatever's in that video file, it's a message. An update on what they're collecting. What they're planning. Maybe it's footage of Robert. Maybe it's footage of Amara. Maybe it's footage of the chambers, showing new faces. Swimmers who disappeared last summer. Divers who were conducting research and went too deep. Sailors whose ships vanished in areas where the creatures are expanding their territory. Or maybe it's footage of me. Maybe they've already collected me. Maybe this is all happening in a chamber 1,000 feet down, and I'm suspended in a membrane. And my conscious mind is creating this narrative while my body is slowly being changed. Maybe I've been down there for years, and this is just the story I'm telling myself to maintain sanity while they rebuild my physiology cell by cell. I don't know. I can't know. What I do know is this. Those creatures are real. The collection is real. And the promise she made, that they're coming shallower, that they're going to reclaim every human, that they're adapting to reach swimmers at the surface, that's real too. If you swim in the ocean, you're in their territory. If you dive, you're entering their collection zones. And if you go deeper than 600 feet, you're making yourself available for preservation. They won't kill you. They'll keep you alive, keep you conscious, force you to witness whatever truth they believe humans need to understand about what we've done to their home. I'm telling this story because the Nereus 2 disappeared 3 weeks ago, because Amara vanished 4 years ago, because Robert was taken 6 years ago, because I have footage that proves all of it and no one will believe it. I'm telling this story because in 6 years the pattern has accelerated. Ship disappearances have increased by 34% in areas associated with deep ocean trenches. Unexplained diver disappearances are up 27%. And the reported depths where people are vanishing keep getting shallower. In 2018, Robert was taken from a ship at the surface. The creatures came aboard. That wasn't supposed to be possible. She said they were adapting to lower pressures, but I didn't think it would happen so quickly. How much longer until they can survive in shallow water? In swimming zones? In harbors and beaches? I'm 47 years old. I won't look at the ocean anymore. And I won't open that video file, because once I see what's in it, I'll know for certain what's coming. I'll know whether the collection is complete, whether they've taken everyone who knew the truth. I'll know whether I'm next. The file is still sitting in my inbox, unopened, waiting. And every day I don't open it, I wonder if today is the day they'll come for me. If today is the day I join Robert and Amara and the thousands of others in those chambers. Preserved, conscious, kept alive to witness the return of humanity to the ocean. She told me to tell people what mermaids really do. So I'm telling you. They collect us. They preserve us. They keep us conscious in chambers beneath the waves while they slowly change us back into what we were before we crawled onto land. And they're coming shallower. Every year. Every month. Soon they'll be able to reach you in water you thought was safe. And there's nothing any of us can do to stop them.